Now, there are fears of a partially lost generation as the gap widens between preschool children. In an exclusive survey for Sky News, the Early Years Alliance found that nearly half of education professionals believe that the attainment gap between disadvantaged children and their more affluent peers has widened since the start of the pandemic. Helen Ann Smith has this extended report.
The pre-pandemic parenting playbook. Vast and varied, so often dictated by pressure and privilege. For the lucky, there was classical music, learning to code as they learnt to count, and speak Spanish before they could stand. For many, preschool life was bubbling and busy.
This is not my schedule, this is not my husband's schedule, this is kids' schedule.
But not for all and not for long. The pandemic hitting pause no matter your position. If life and learning were unequal before COVID, what does it look like now? What's the impact? And how long will it last?
Ready for the next dive?
It's a truth persistent and problematic. How well off you are is likely to have an impact on the performance of your child.
It's well known that there's an attainment gap between affluent children and their less well-off peers as they pass through the education system. It's less well known that that attainment gap exists before children even start school. Over a year ago, before the pandemic hit, we set out to ask why. A year later, after a pandemic no one could have predicted, we're returning to ask what the impact has been and if things have got worse.
In 2019, 71% of children starting school were at the expected learning level. For those on free school meals, it was 55%. But there isn't data yet on what happened during the pandemic.
I've been coming here since she was about 9 weeks old. It is difficult because I can't afford to go out and pay for soft play every day and things like that, and even getting around, like, the bus still costs money. So it's been really important for both of us that these centres have been open.
There are many thousands of parents like Kathy supported by child centres, free for those who need, plugging some of the gap for those who can't pay.
We've all said we would have been lost without it, absolutely.
How long's the walk home? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
About 5 minutes.
Before the pandemic, Kathy would be here numerous times a week. Playgroup plus classes in cooking and weaning. Eliza was ahead for her age. A year on, things are different.
When lockdown happened, it was gone overnight. And I know that kids are easy to adjust to things, but that must have had some kind of effect, the fact that all of a sudden your whole life has completely changed.
The centre she relied on so much has become a medical hub. She's only been a handful of times all year. She's sure it's had an impact.
She just wanted to sit down and watch TV all day. She didn't want to play with her toys. She didn't want to do any arts and crafts or anything. She just wanted to sit down and watch TV. She definitely stopped just kind of going out there. She just wanted to sit. It almost feels like you're not doing enough as a parent because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing or what you want them to be able to do. It was really hard, really hard.
Please, could you find me a curly cup?
Nurseries remained open for all children during the second and third lockdowns. But during the first, only the vulnerable and children of key workers could attend. The harm wrought now coming to light.
Who's that household lady?
The Early Years Alliance represents those working with preschool children. In an exclusive survey of their members, 3/4 said they'd seen changes in the learning and development of children who stayed at home during the first lockdown. And nearly 60% said fewer children are now at the expected level of learning. At Teddy Bear Corner in Warwickshire, not all children returned. For those that did, the impact was stark.
Some of them came back and had thrived in lockdown, but then other children, it had kind of gone the other way. Their speech and language had kind of gone back to where it was before they started with us. And the children move up to us, they mainly all potty trained. We noticed that they kind of regressed during lockdown and came back and were kind of back needing reminding to go to the toilet. The children who haven't necessarily had that support from us this year because of COVID, they're not necessarily ready emotionally and socially to go into school. I don't know if they'll ever get that time back.
And are you worried about some of these children going forward?
Yes, the ones that are going to school in September, if they're the ones that have got, you know, difficulties, we don't have long now to put those things, the provisions in place that we normally would.
But they're most worried about the already disadvantaged. Some have fallen disproportionately behind. In fact, nearly half of early years practitioners said the gap between the worst off children and their peers has widened since the start of the pandemic.
That is brilliant. Well done, guys.
Sue's run this nursery for 25 years. There's a mix of children here from a wide range of homes. Levelling the playing field has always been paramount, but it's never been harder.
I think lockdown did have a profound effect on them. The qualities have always been there, but I think it's going to get worse. To the detriment of all the children we look after. This generation could well be a partially lost generation from some things.
And in all your 25 years of working in this sector, have you ever seen something that would have such an impact on children this young?
No.
The difference in outcomes is likely to be down to a complex mix of factors. Cramped living conditions perhaps, or parents working multiple jobs that can't be done from home.
Experts in this field are keen to emphasise that all families are different and that the pandemic has taken a deep toll on all sorts of different people for all sorts of different reasons. But many fear the really detrimental impacts will last longest in the most vulnerable, that children will carry them through their time at school, entrenching already deep social and educational inequalities.
You made this.
You made it?
Elsie May started attending this nursery during the first lockdown when her family qualified for extra support.
It was probably the lowest point I've ever been as a parent. Nothing was as hard as the first lockdown.
Philomena's a single parent and her eldest son has special needs.
Look, eyes forward.
She says the extra nursery time for Elsie May literally kept the family together, but that time has still taken its toll.
Well, she's definitely regressed. Milestones that she was hitting, toileting, things like that. She's massively regressed in them to the point where, I've had to have the health visitor involved now.
You worry as well that the impact of this will stay with her?
With her forever, yeah. I truly believe it will. She used to be such a sparky little thing. I do think for Elsie May, it's changed her personality. It's changed her little way of thinking.
But others are more isolated. This is Talitha and her twins Thomas and Tegwin.
Hello, morning. How are you? I'm fine, thank you.
When we met them last year, life was just settling down. They'd been homeless for a few months early in the twins' lives.
Hello, sweetie.
A baby bank delivery, another huge help.
It's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? Because I didn't expect all this stuff. When you're like a single mum, you don't want anyone to think you can't cope. You don't want people to think you can't do the things that you need to do. There's a bit of you that feels like you can't do it. But you can do it because it takes a lot to ask for help. It takes more to ask for help than it does to sit and struggle on your own.
Money was tight, but Talitha was positive.
Take her in the red.
But a year later, she didn't feel up to catching up with us on camera. Like so many, she's found the pandemic very difficult and very isolating. She was happy for us to report that the twins are well, but the family have barely been out for a year. As clear a sign as any of COVID's cruel but quiet impacts. There are many hidden tolls to this pandemic. The worst may not be realised for years, taken on those too young to remember.
And you can watch Helen Ann's special reports throughout the day right here on Sky News.